Happy politics, and welcome to a Thursday edition of your favorite BC Politics podcast. This is BC Poly Hot Stove. I'm joined in let's start with, speaking of glitches, and we're going to tell you about a glitch we just had in a second. I forgot to introduce myself. You should know who I am by now. It's Maclean K. I'm the editor-in-chief of this fine site, The Orca, and I'm joined in a socially distant manner by...
Don't you know who I am? I'm Maclean K. No, I'm just kidding. It's Jordan Bateman, VP Comms for the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association. Hello.
Hello. This was, I think, our fourth take after some technical glitches, which are exceeded only by the technical glitch from yesterday's Fin, which had an entire section of email replaced with the letter T. How did that happen? I have no idea.
Well, T is a great letter. T is an important letter. I use it often in Wordle. In my first guess, I'll often use the letter T in there. So, it fit us to a T, Maclean.
I didn't even know until I got an email back from one of those subscribers saying, "This is what my email looks like this morning. Is something wrong with my server?" And I'm, "Ooh, that's not good."
And you said, "I'm sorry, Minister Dix. I will try to get a better one to you shortly." I'm just assuming.
All right. There's lots to talk about this week. Let's start with the reason we're recording on Thursday. Do you want to start with the fun stuff?
Yeah, let's do the fun stuff.
Okay, so normally we record on Tuesday, but Tuesday, Jordan, you were very, very busy. You have, I'll let you talk.
ICBA, we had our annual gala dinner. I think it's our 45th annual, and our celebration of construction. 975 people gathered at the Park Hotel in downtown Vancouver to hear Russell Wilson, formerly of the Seattle Seahawks, now of the Denver Broncos, speak and celebrate construction. And Maclean, man, it was great to see everyone again. It was just fun to be in a room with all these folks I haven't seen in a couple of years. It's been, I think, 2.5 years since we did our last gala because of obviously COVID and the public protocols. Great to see people there. People were excited. I think we were all exhausted the next day because none of us are used to hobnobbing that much anymore. It was great to see you and a number of the Orca contributors as well. It was fantastic to have you in the room. It was a great night all around. And Russ, I thought, really brought the magic and was incredibly charming, very personable, and I thought quite transparent about about what he was feeling and where he's at in his life and career right now. So it was a great night. Loved it, and hope you had a good time.
It's amazing. I also, first of all, thank you for having us there. Mm-hmm. And anytime you spend an evening sitting between Jody Vance and Dr. Sport Greg Douglas, I just sat and basked in the stories because, there was a lot of... I just sat and listened. It was fantastic. I had a great time. And I really enjoyed Russell Wilson, not only because he's my quarterback now, but he has a different kind of charisma than some of the other quarterbacks you've had in the past. He was very casual and personable, and I mean casual in the best possible way. Yeah. He was very youthful and enthusiastic, and I really enjoyed listening to him.
Yeah, he's so damn cool. I think it's the word you're looking for.
It is.
He's got the swagger. He's he's a quarterback for an NFL franchise. He's won a Super Bowl. He's very confident and comfortable in who he is. And beforehand, he asked a little bit, it's the Seahawk country, how's the crowd? And because obviously he did ask for a trade from the Seahawks. And we said, Russell, enough time had passed from the trade that we weren't in shock about it anymore. And I really feel like in the room, the Seahawk fans who were there, and I am not one, I'm a Packers owner, but the Seahawk fans who were there were very much on board with honoring him for his 10 seasons in Seattle, remembering the great Super Bowl runs and the great teams, and thanking him. And it was a bit of a love-in, I thought.
Yeah. You must have been thinking, can you imagine if that had gone down the day before, the week before?
Yeah.
Might have felt a little different in there, but You're right. They've had some time to get over it. And 10 years is more than enough time to expect that your favorite player will stay with your favorite team. I think that's a good run by anyone's definition.
Unless you're Aaron Charles Rodgers, in which case you're a Packer for life.
So you were good enough to ask Mr. Oh, see, that's awesome.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm a Packer guy, so to have a Seahawk or Bronco, God forbid, piece of merchandise in my office would be terrible. But Russ, fortunately, went to the University of Wisconsin, best quarterback in Wisconsin history, even though he was only there 1 year. They've looked for 80 years before for a guy like Russ, and they've been looking for 12 years since. Can't find a replacement. He was kind enough to sign this Wisconsin Badgers helmet for me, which, of course, Green Bay, proud home of, or proudly in Wisconsin, so it'll fit in nicely in my Packer memorabilia stash.
I will also share, and I'm going to use forced perspective to make you think this helmet is just as big. It's not the size of the helmet; it's how you use it. That is one of the first Russell Wilson autographs you're going to see with his new team. And I don't know who that Maclean guy is, but he's clearly very lucky.
It's pretty good. It's good to know people. See, folks, Maclean puts up with a lot by having me on Hot Stove. I'm not, the NDP's favorite dude, and certainly not the NDP comms people favorite guy. So they'll call and complain or DM or passively aggressively bitch about me to Maclean, and sometimes not even passively, just aggressively bitch. And so it's my pleasure to at least provide this young man with some sort of payback, some payola.
With some protection.
Some payola for putting up with me in a Bronco Mini helmet.
The better to suffer the slings and arrows. Speaking of slings and arrows, let's talk about the thing that dominated the news early this week. That was, in question period, the Premier, well, there's no two ways about it, he dropped the F-bomb, which is not something you're allowed to do in the legislature. There is a strict prohibition against what is called unparliamentary language, and yes, the F-bomb explicitly qualifies as unparliamentary language. Yes, he later apologized and took responsibility for it, but in the heat of the moment, he was driven to distraction. The debate was about BC's ongoing family doctor shortage, and we'll talk about that in a second. In the Premier's telling, the heckling was so much that the frustration got the better of him, and it got the better of him. I've spoken to a few MLAs who were in the chamber, and they describe a Premier who was extremely angry. He left the premises immediately afterward. Some attempts to restrain him and calm him down by the people sitting next to him, notably Finance Minister Selina Robinson, did not work. And the Premier lost his temper, as he himself concedes.
Hulk Hogan is back, ladies and gentlemen. Roar! For several years, John Horgan, Von Palmer wrote about this quite eloquently, I thought. Horgan was known as a guy who had thin skin, big temper, would accost press gallery folks that he didn't like when they were saying certain things, and he was well known as Hulk Hogan around the precinct. And then we got, he kind of rebranded, and they hired Premier Dad. They hired a Horgan Whisperer, and all of a sudden he was all about Star Trek and dad jokes, which was very woke and or lit for him for quite some time. And every once in a while you see a little flicker, but not much. Well, I don't know what Trevor Halford did to get under his skin, that QP. But a couple things happened. So my understanding is, first, the questions, Adrian Dix sort of took the first round of doctor questions, as he should. He's the health minister. And, the Dix persona, especially during COVID, is that no one knows more about health than Adrian Dix. And Adrian Dix works on health 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, as if he doesn't sleep. He's some sort of robot that just kind of runs the healthcare system day after day after day, never taking a break. Come on, guys, settle down on the Dix praise and love here. Everyone is human and everyone's allowed to have a vacation. Adrian, take one. But, that sort of started there. And then Horgan gets up, and I guess he just, he lost it. Now, F-bombs have been dropped in the ledge before, but in Palmer's piece, 40 years of covering the ledge, he does not recall a Premier ever dropping one. He did not recall one ever Premier ever dropping one in a speech, in an actual question period, he was answering. He had the mic. It wasn't just overheard, kind of in the banter.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah, and Horgan is Horgan as an opposition leader and a critic he was an A1 heckler, one of the best. He's used to the heckles, to heckling. He's had 5 years as Premier. He's used to being heckled, but this one got under his skin. And it was weird, because at first he kind of shot back, why don't you go to the bathroom and talk to yourselves? Which doesn't even make sense. It's nonsensical. And then he's and drops the F-bomb at them. I found it very telling, the story of Selina Robinson touching his arm and trying to calm him down. I thought back to, remember the debate where Christie was under his skin? And she touched his arm at one point, and he was don't touch me. I could just, it just kind of echoed to that for me a little bit there. I'm a nerd, so this stuff I remember.
I had forgotten that.
And then, him getting up and almost immediately storming out. And my understanding is he left the precincts. He actually left the building and went somewhere to be calmed down or by someone, whatever. And then, an hour or two later, the Irish Spring tweet, which I don't think was him as much as it was, staff. I think it was some tweets are very, are definitely co-authored, I would say.
Oh, of course. That's also not unusual. Yeah.
And then coming back and just repenting to the Speaker of the House and trying to, put it behind him, which, he should have done. He did fine. But that's an interesting sign of a guy who, he's a little bit at his wit's end here. And this doctor shortage thing has touched a nerve in a way that maybe other issues haven't.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that. Rob Shaw wrote about it, saying he takes it as an indication that the premier is tired, which I think is true. Mm-hmm. Setting aside his cancer diagnosis and treatment, which would exhaust anyone, it's hard to be premier, and you can see it in his face. And he has, there's been some slip-ups in the last couple of years, and so these things tend to sort of snowball. But you're right. I think it's also specific to the issue. This is a very sensitive one for any government, and I would argue particularly the NDP, because it affects so many people. In the city where I am, which is also where the premier lives, 1 in 4 people don't have a family doctor. That is insane for any country, but even more so for a country that prides itself on public health care, and a party that prides itself on, getting public health care, setting it into motion in this country. For it to be shown and increasingly seen as, well, that aspect of it, at least, isn't working, that is a very sensitive thing. Healthcare and the way the party managed COVID have been one of the reasons that, or at least the perception of how the government has managed COVID, has been one of the reasons the NDP and John Horgan remain fairly popular. In fact, the most popular of most of the provincial governments. For healthcare to become an issue where the NDP are vulnerable on, this is a matter of life and death. This is an existential crisis. And the problem the NDP has is no matter what they do today, tomorrow, next year, there is no solving this right away. This is a massive and systemic problem that is not as simple as just, well, we'll hire thousands of doctors. That is not the way the world works.
Yeah, you're quite correct. So just closing off the Horgan so tired thing. Premier, you're not the only one who's so tired. We're all tired. Families with kids with autism are tired of the way your government's handling that file. I can tell you construction workers are tired of having 85% of them cut out of projects simply because you're giving sweetheart deals to union cronies. Workers are tired of having you strip them of their democratic right to a secret ballot and union votes. Voters are tired of your promises about rental rebates and cell phone bills and not coming through and everything in life becoming more and more expensive. And people who fill up their cars are tired of you constantly raising gas taxes at a time we're paying more than $2 a liter. So we're all very, very tired. I get it. You do not have to actually answer the questions in question period. You could have just sat there smugly and said, heck, I'm premier. I don't have to answer that. Dix will do it. And Adrian Dix, I'm sure, would be perfectly happy to answer that next round again and would have done it in his calm, robotic, Vulcan-like manner in which he shows no emotion and just kind of spiels out statistic after statistic. And, we have 2.7 million rapid tests on shelf now, and that mean nothing because that's the kind of numbers baffle-gab that Adrian Dix specializes in. And, defangs question period because it makes it so eye-glazingly boring that even the reporters can't possibly report on it. So you don't have to answer the question. You jumped up, and what a weird way to lead your team. I wonder what that team thought about that. That's for a party that already, frankly, is in leadership race mode. We have Ravi Callan out there and his folks signing up folks. You've got Adrian Dix kicking tires. You've got David Eby for years has been touted and coveted that. You've got all sorts of cabinet ministers starting to put things together. It does make you wonder, they may be sitting there going, well, John's had a good run, but, maybe John is tired and maybe John should, step aside and let the next generation lead.
Yeah, to your point on you're not having to answer the questions in question period, you're quite right. And it is a normal thing for, if there's a question period, especially if a single minister is the focus of most of the questions, which was the case Monday, it is not at all unusual for the premier to stand up at the last question and try and, spike the volleyball in the opposition's faces. And at no point will they actually address the substance of the question. They'll just rattle on all the reasons why the government is great, why the opposition is terrible, and they'll sit down to thunder generous applause. This is standard operating procedure, but it has to land. It has to work. It has to be plausible. And that didn't happen on Monday. The other problem is, as you point out, Adrian Dix, among his many other talents, is very, very good at defanging question period. I like the way you put that. He does sort of frame things in this velvet fog of numbers and statistics, but also in a, hey, thank you for asking the question. We're working together on this. And he's very sort of conciliatory, and he's trying very hard to sort of soothe the questioner. It's often very effective. And then Horgan went completely the other way. And it didn't work, and he lost control of his temper, and the bomb fell.
Yeah. Now we should talk about the doctor's issue. I want to talk about that. But you read to me a tweet he put out this morning, which illustrates just another bad comms play on this doctor file by the NDP.
Just an hour ago now at 9:09 a.m., and then I'm going to read directly, 100,000 people came to BC last year and didn't bring a family doctor with them. I'll read the rest just so it's said that I did. There's a lot of work to do, but we're determined to make sure every British Columbian can get the health care they need. This problem, I tweeted something to the effect that I would have phrased this differently. What the Premier said is factually true, but it comes across as blaming the incomers for not thinking to pack a doctor, which is ridiculous, and also that the problem is solely because BC is too popular. This was a problem, this had been building up for some time.
100,000 people moved to BC last year, he says in his tweet. What about the other 800,000 British Columbians who are already here who didn't have a family doctor, Mr. Premier? Is that their fault as well? Like, walk-in clinic time waits now are the worst in Canada. Sometimes 4, 5, 6 hours, if you can even get there. They're often closing by 10 a.m. because they've seen their max of patients. And in a previous tweet, his advice to people was like, go to a walk-in clinic. In another tweet, it was like, oh, you don't like that we're getting rid of the mask mandate? Just pack a little hand sanitizer in your purse. Like, this is a guy and a comms team that has fallen off the rails as far, like, they were pitch perfect for so long on these health issues. They're flailing around right now, and they don't know how to answer this, how to solve that. Look, like, you're right, this won't be solved in a day, but go out there and be like, listen, we are going to double the funding to UBC, UNBC, and UVic for doctor training. We're going to maximize midwife program to get more healthcare professionals of all sorts in there. We're going to max out the nurse practitioner program and add it to such and such and such. We're going to streamline. Like, there are ways to at least look like you're doing something, not this petulant. How dare you, 100,000 people who moved here to BC, not pack a family doctor? Well, Mr. Horgan, 100,000 people moved to BC. What did your government do to attract a doctor among that 100,000 to British Columbia? Because you know what? It's not the individual family who pays under your great Tommy Douglas authored system. It is, the government is the single payer for healthcare. And if the government can't find the resources in order to get the folks here to take care of people, that's on the government, not on these 100,000 people who moved here. And I, for one, want to be clear. I welcome those 100,000 new British Columbians. Welcome to BC. We're damn proud you're here. We're glad you chose this place to live. Some of you have come from other parts of Canada. Some of you have come from the Ukraine as refugees. Some of you have been resettled from other areas. You've immigrated here. Welcome. You are welcome here, despite what the Premier says about not bringing along a family doctor. And hopefully the next government, maybe led by a guy who gets elected on Saturday, hopefully the next government has a little bit more vision, a little bit more plan, a little bit more welcoming to newcomers, and has a better plan for healthcare. This one is a mess.
As a quick aside, I had actually, so busy this week has been, I had completely forgotten the by-election is this weekend.
Yes. I've added it to the list to talk about.
Okay, that's
Maclean,
good.
I told you I was feeling feisty today. So
you did in fact warn me you're feeling feisty, and that has certainly followed through. Should we talk about the by-election quickly since we've just brought it up?
Yeah, Saturday.
It's Saturday. We're talking, of course, about the Vancouver-Kilkenna by-election to replace the departing Andrew Wilkinson. And this is the election that is the new BC Liberal leader, Kevin Falcon, is a candidate in, as well as Wendy Hayco and Jeanette Ash from the Greens and NDP, respectively. This is not expected to be a competitive by-election, largely because, well, new leaders often bring a lot of support, but also this is a very, very safe riding. I do not see a result from Saturday that is anything other than Kevin Falcon becoming an MLA.
Yeah, look, I think the margin will be closer than people think, just because the turnout is going to be so abysmal.
Yes, true.
No one knows about this by-election. The Kilkenna is very quiet. They're trying. All the campaigns are trying, but nothing has made traction because it's such a major center-right location, it sort of feels like a foregone conclusion. But, I think what will happen is the NDP will be a little higher than they were against Wilkinson, but the turnout will be so small. Like, I don't know how you judge that as any kind of statistical thing. I will say this. I did have a chuckle on the weekend when the NDP put out a tweet basically chastising Kevin Falcon and outgoing Vancouver-Kilchana MLA Andrew Wilkinson for having an event at a fancy $60,000 a year country club, which, by the way, you didn't actually have to pay $6,000 a year to get to the event, but whatever. When at the same time, they were also, there was also promotion for the Premier's meeting at Bear Mountain, which, correct me, I'm not an Islander, but Bear Mountain, pretty swanky little golf club of its own.
Yeah, it's pretty ritzy.
Man of the people, exclusive. John Horgan at Bear Mountain. Oh, that's got to be like tens of thousands of dollars for a membership. Ooh, maybe he's not as close to the people as we think there, Jeanette Ash. Oh, I don't know. But look, the NDP, I think, are phoning in that by-election pretty good, too. They put a candidate in who has very interesting background, as far as trying to reach out to a Vancouver-Kilchana audience.
Yeah. I think they're using it as a lab to test what lines may or may not work against.
They've trotted out like the very lowest tier of cabinet minister. Sorry, Sheila Malcolmson, but your performance puts you in the low tier of my books.
You are very pugnacious today.
Look, mental health crisis is worse than ever, and we've had a mental health premier. I told you I'm feisty. I'm like punchy
I love
today.
It. We got to do these on Thursdays more often.
I don't know if it's the coffee
and calm on Tuesdays. Thursdays, very different thing. This is a new thing to discover. I'm happy.
Thursday, Jordan's had enough of all these politicians and their nonsense.
So we were going to talk about. We talked about the doctor shortage, and we did a quick diversion to Vancouver-Kilchana. The other subject that is getting a lot of attention this week is crime. BC's urban mayors wrote to the Premier and the Attorney General asking them to, none of this is news, this will be familiar to most of you, asking them to do something about prolific offenders, people who are well known to police, many of whom have sheets, pages and pages and pages of charges and convictions, whom are released back out into the public over and over again. Les Lane looked at one, because he writes here in the Times Colonist in Victoria, looked at a Victoria case. I think it was 246 different charges. I mean, that's insane. And we're not talking parking tickets is the thing. And these people, these prolific offenders, generate an absolutely massively outsized percentage of things like police calls, crimes, both reported and unreported, vandalism. The list goes on. And so having them continuously sent back out to continuously reoffend, again, 246 different offenses, just seems like a lesson that refuses to be learned.
I'm going to flash back for a moment to Jordan as a young, hungry township councillor in Langley Township. Township was about 90,000 people. It's 2007-ish or so, and there's a crime wave in a community of Aldergrove, which is about 15,000 people. And this same guy, police knew him, would charge him, courts would release him, charge him, courts. The same guy basically just terrorized the commercial area of this town for a year and a bit. Just, breaking into every store, stealing stuff out of yards, all over and over and over and over and over again. And we, the police were at their wits' end. Like, they knew who he was. They'd go to his house, they'd pick him up, and there's stuff, like, he wasn't hiding it. And again, he'd be caught and released, caught and released, caught and released, caught and released. And that's when I really learned that a very small number of people, even one person, can actually make life very miserable for a whole neighborhood, a whole community. And this is that, it's a little bit of that broken windows theory that was back in the 90s that Rudy Giuliani, when he wasn't crazy, used to help clean up New York City. We're seeing a lot of, like, this idea that, this kind of turnstile justice system we have now, where it's getting a scrutiny that we haven't seen in a long time, and especially in the States. So, these problems are especially seen in some of the progressive-led cities along the West Coast. There's a guy running for governor of California, Michael Schellenberg. He's written a book called San Francisco. And essentially, and this book, I don't know if Schellenberg will win. I mean, it's a pretty blue state. He's a pretty red guy. But I'm not, he's written about like how this kind of the progressive, he would call it mollycoddling of criminals and drug addicts, and has created this kind of ecosystem of people who can never get the help they need to get clean, and then they, basically everything kind of goes to hell in a handbasket because they're committing crimes and all this stuff. Now, that like there's for someone like me, not to be all Jody Vance, want to be in the middle on things because you know me, I don't love the middle. There's a pendulum, right? There is the turnstile. There's San Francisco. There's the middle where I think us normal humans would like to live. 248 crimes, accusations, convictions, charges. That to me is pretty clear where, like, I'm pretty solidly in the, okay, this guy should be locked up for some time. So yeah, good. These urban mayors, they're fit to be tied. Policing and emergency services are to municipalities what healthcare is to the provincial government. It takes the most amount of their money. It's what you spend the most on, and it's what you feel like you maybe have the least amount of control with, because you generally have a police board or you have a contract with the RCMP, and you don't want to get involved in specific investigations. So you're constantly kind of dancing that line with like trying to nudge the RCMP in the correct direction, give them the resources they need, give them the help they need. But again, there's that second step, the court system, that is falling down. Yeah. So hopefully EB is going to do something on this. I don't think it fits in with, I don't think EB is really thought of as a law and order guy. God knows he wrote protest manuals on how to get around the law back in the day as the head of civil liberties. So I'm not really sure that he is the champion, but hey, maybe only Nixon could go to China. Maybe only EB can crack down on repeat offenders.
Yeah, it's fun. I saw some of the responses, reactions to this letter, and some of them were fairly predictable, saying, well, it's what you'd expect from conservatives, mayors from smaller suburban centers that tough on crime but sells well. One of the two co-signers was Lisa Helps, who is the mayor of Victoria, and whatever other criticisms you want to level at Mayor Helps, she's not a conservative. It's a real issue in her city, and full credit to her for acknowledging it and asking for help at the provincial level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, this is a big issue, and you're coming into municipal election season, which will dovetail into the next topic. So every stupid idea is on the table, but also some good ideas are on the table finally. And listen, these mayors, if you're the mayor of Kelowna, I don't know if Kelowna signed it, I imagine they did. If you're the mayor of Kelowna, you can identify the 10, 15, 20 people who are causing 80% of the crime. It's got to be frustrating not to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, and we're talking about a very small number of people who are just having a ridiculously outsized impact. It should be a solvable problem.
Yes,
but we'll see if it is in fact solved. You hinted at the next topic, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not. What is the bridge you want me to make here? So, from the idiotic city council that brought you reasonable cut taxes, that brought you air taxes, that brought you the loss of every gas station in the downtown core, that brought you all sorts of nonsense. Vancouver City Council, they brought you pool closures and bike lanes and on seawalls. From that same civic government, we bring you now the empty stores tax. Maclean, to quote John Horgan, fuck. Sorry kids, earmuffs. Of all the lame-brained, hair-brained, dumbass ideas I've heard from municipal councils over the years, this might be the worst. And I just cannot believe that they would think. So this is a civic government, the city of Vancouver, who makes it so painfully difficult for any business to open in their thing. That is months behind on permits, on bylaws, on renovations. That did sweet F all on helping small businesses during COVID. And now they've decided the way to solve all these suddenly empty storefronts is we're going to tax the property owner for not having tenants in there. What the hell are you thinking? How stupid are you when it comes to the very basic, the
most basic level of commerce understanding of supply, demand. Like, this is not like economics 401. This is economics like for dummies. Like, this is the simplest kind of thing. You want to have stores that are full? Build a business community, build a climate that attracts businesses to Vancouver that want to locate there. And you don't do it. This is also the same government, by the way, that has hiked property taxes on these small businesses over and over and over and over again, even during COVID, that forced them to close. Every day I read another story of this little business in Kitts, and that little business here in Carrisdale, and this little business in Yaletown that had been there for decades that had to shut down because they couldn't afford the friggin' property taxes. And now you're going to tax them more? like Vancouver, stop electing these fools. Like, your park board is a disaster. Your council is coming up with stupid harebrained ideas like this. Like, come on, Vancouver. I believe in you, Vancouver. Vancouver, let's have a talk. I live in Langley. I live, half an hour outside Vancouver, and, I do go to Vancouver quite a bit because you forced me to go there for Connect games and BC Lion games and to meet Russell Wilson at the Park Hotel and good things like that. You're better than this. You're better than the mayor and council and park board and school board you've elected. You are better than this. Elect better, smarter people who understand the very basics of economics, and that the way to have a thriving small business community in your city is to make it welcoming to small business owners, not to create another stupid harebrained tax. I don't know where John Cooper and Mark Marison and Ken Sim are. They should be screaming from the rooftops about this. They should be walking around handing out tax bills to people, like fake tax bills. Like, they should be. This is the moment, right? Like, how out of touch, how foolish does the council have to be to support this stuff? It blows my mind, Maclean, that folks like this can get elected. It really does shake my faith in the fine people of Vancouver. You're better than this. Elect better people. We're begging you. Because these harebrained ideas don't just stay within the city boundaries. You may be a nuclear-free zone. It doesn't spread. Like these dumb ideas stay there in Vancouver, and then they spread to other stupid progressive mayors across the province, and they bring in Vancouver does it, so I guess we can. Stop electing these nut bars and elect good people with solid business sense to run your city hall. Please, on behalf of all of us in British Columbia, I'm begging you, please.
That is, I think, my favorite rant of all of your many BC Poly Hot Stove rants. That is, you've had some smash hits, but I think this will prove to be your hey ya, the hit that will live on. And I don't know why that's the first one that came to mind. It's a good song.
I'm just begging you, Vancouver. You're so good. You're so much better than this. Please.
It comes out of I think it comes from two places. There is a habit among some in this province and country to associate the word business with millionaire. Yeah. We've talked about this before. That there are people who say the word business and they close their eyes and they picture Chip Wilson,
Elon Musk.
What's that? Elon Musk, exactly. Yeah. It's like, well, they're all if the person who owns Twitter is exactly the same as the family of immigrants who own the laundromat down the street, and it's so ridiculously false and patently untrue, and yet there is this sort of almost subconscious mindset that it's just a question of making the businesses pay their fair share. Why don't they pay more? And why and then freaking out when they have to raise their prices. And the other thing is that there is also a mindset, especially in places like Vancouver, where there is no problem you can't tax your way out of.
Yeah.
And that is true for some problems. It is not true for this one. There is no one size fits all for policy, and the points you made, I wouldn't even hope to improve upon, but I think there's this mindset that business people have lots of money and more taxes are always a good thing, sell to a segment of the population without them ever really thinking it through, and that's what I think is happening here.
Yeah, look, I'm going to disagree with you. You cannot tax your way out of any problem. If you could, no one would smoke.
That's true.
We tax the hell out of cigarettes. They are taxed at several times what they actually cost to produce. And still there are smokers. God bless them. God bless them quit. It is bad. They know it. But so you can't tax your way out of every problem. You just can't. And taxing your way towards filling storefronts? What? one of the things they did when they brought in the empty homes tax, and this is what's modeled on, because, oh, Maclean, the empty homes tax is so bloody successful that why wouldn't we want to emulate this in other parts of Vancouver? Oh, it's so wonderful. The empty homes tax is garbage. Christy Clark on the Curse of Politics podcast basically came out and said, yeah, the speculation tax works for like 10 minutes and then it stops working, you know, but you kind of had to do it because the public were demanding something, right? Like, you know, housing is more unaffordable than ever. So you added this tax and it's more unaffordable than ever. So how is that actually helping? Yeah, some people were able to rent, but rents are still skyrocketing. You know, you weren't able to tax your way out of it. But now you're so deluded, self-delusional, that you think, now we can apply this to this. Well, one of the things they said when they brought in the empty homes tax, and I remember because I was with the Taxpayers Federation at the time and I was charting what they were saying, was this idea that, well, you know, housing is a right. Housing is a right. You know, it's a right that everyone has, and so we got to make sure that there's as much housing available. Okay, all right, housing is, yeah, everyone should have a home. Absolutely, okay, I get that. How does it apply to stores? Like,
yeah.
Like everyone has a right to have a, you know, little convenience store in the neighborhood. Like, this does not apply. So, yeah. This is a government that did nothing for the people of or for the businesses in Vancouver during COVID. Nothing, and then we're shocked when, you know, so many businesses closed down. I just, yeah, this one got under my skin. And
yeah, I mean, if this is not, this is a hypothetical. If the problem was that all of these storefronts are owned by, I don't know, Saudi oligarchs who are keeping them empty because they're mean, it doesn't matter what the reason is, then yes, maybe you could explore this as a solution. But that's not the problem. Yeah. That's not what's happening in Vancouver. It's that, well, again, you explained it fairly well. It's that these businesses are at the brink already, and many were forced to close because of the pandemic, and costs have only gone up since. So adding another cost, I just don't see as enticing any of them, really. I was going to say more than one or two, but I don't see this as this is a solution in search of a problem. And their problem exists, but this is not the right solution.
No. Look, let's take it to a Victoria context. So I was in Victoria recently. I was shocked how many stores were vacant on the downtown. They're vacant in the downtown because small businesses weren't able to survive during COVID. There was the loss of tourists, all of those different things. They're not vacant because the landowner's like, haha, I want to create blight in this community and I'm going to control Victoria and teach John Horgan a lesson because he won't be able to buy a souvenir for it. No, of course not. Like, it's just market forces. Now the problem is, though, that neighborhood has gotten seedier. Lisa helps writing a letter illustrating that kind of issue that's going on there, where even like big guys like me kind of think twice about walking down there at certain times, like, you know, it's not really attractive for young people or for tourists, and that as attractive as it once was. But again, that's not the landowner's fault. You want to make that more attractive? Put money into revitalizing that area. Put money into your RCMP and make sure that you're getting repeat offenders. Like, there are ways to bring businesses in, to bring investors into a community. This is not one of them.
Yeah, well.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Election year.
Ladies and gentlemen, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm sure I don't have to say it because even the NDP aren't crazy enough to go along with this idea. And thank God that Vancouver doesn't actually have the power to implement this tax without a law being passed in Victoria by the government. And let's just go on the record here, guys, you know this is stupid, so don't even bother.
I suspect you're right about that. Before we go, this is going to be the shortest you will ever have to wait for another edition of BC Poly Hot Stove, because not only are we going to go back to early next week, we're going to do Monday, which is as early as we possibly can because, well, for the best possible reason, you're going on vacation.
Yes, exactly. So yes, Monday we will be back, and I will try to find some other government to drive me crazy enough to rant to. Rantsylvania, here we go.
Rantsylvania, I like that. That used to be a wrestling blog back
in the
day.
It was a great one. You had that, and you had the NWWWO, the New World Wide Web Order.
Man, we are exposing ourselves as nerds today.
That's right. That's all good. Well, Hulk Hogan got me all excited. So.
Until Monday. He's Jordan Bateman. I'm Maclean K. Happy politics.